Okie dokie, here's my vlog for the discussion post. Not sure how in depth or long this will be, but I guess we'll just start with the first one. Our first discussion, there were two of them. I did the one where we watched some videos online and talked about the first words that came to in our head and just kind of what we thought about the videos. The first video I watched was the binary hand dance one, which I really liked. It made me laugh. Some of the words I put in were, after I watched it the first time, I was like, what? Like, I don't even know what I just watched. I liked when it was breakdancing and there were like dollar bills thrown at it, like it was a stripper. Thought that was funny. And as I practiced it, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And this would be effective for young learners, young kids who are still going like, oh, this and that. I also use the word comical, I guess is similar. Other than the hand dance, I watched the other video is called Beauty of Mathematics. And I like this one because, well, I guess I use the word applicable because it showed how math is kind of integrated into things in our daily lives and events and places that most people wouldn't think. I kind of wrote about how, you know, for my whole life and just most people in general, think of math as, algebra and long division, and everyone hates it. But I really liked in this video was showing how math can be, and it shows up in nature all the time, which is what I love. I studied ecology for undergrad, so I'm very familiar with ecosystems and the relationships between animals and plants and stuff like that. So it's cool to see math in those situations. That's the first discussion. The second one was if it's important for students to take risks. And one of the things that I liked, there was a quote on 52 I wrote. It says, students should speak up in class when they have a question, notice something, have an idea, make a conjecture, agree or disagree, want to build on a classmate's thinking, would like to help, or maybe they just have an answer. I wrote a lot about how students are super hesitant to raise their hand in any situation unless they know the answer. And I want students to be able to share more than just an answer, right? I want students to share whatever really just pops into their head. My classroom will be discussion based, right? I should do little talking, right? I want to start a discussion and let students kind of go through it. I especially like when students make connections to things outside of the classroom. And especially with math where, so many kids and adults think like, when am I ever going to use this, right? When am I going to use this outside of class? And I like when they make connections about that. And I wrote more about, um, students are hesitant to take risks because they're going to be teased or humiliated, which, you know, sometimes will happen in a classroom, right? That's kids are kids. They'll sometimes say rude things, but right in my classroom, it should be acceptable, right? We should be able to move past comments such as that, and we're taught from a young age like don't share unless you're correct, but we've talked all semester, I guess not semester, summer, about kind of moving from sort of the fixed mindset of you have to be right or else you're wrong. But there's more value in taking a risk and being wrong because then we're really learning, right? We're learning about what we did wrong. I think it's great when other students can join the discussion and help a certain student, further understand a concept. So, I mean, the basis of that is yes, students should take risks because when they make a mistake, that's when, the best learning comes. The third one was about kind of a similar thing, like should you like want your students to make mistakes in class? And I wrote about how, as a kid, it, or like, I think it was more, let me look, sorry. I think it was more like making, you kind of get roasted by your teachers for making careless mistakes. Yeah. I wrote about how my teachers would always be frustrated with me because I kind of had the whole problem there. All my steps were great, and then I forgot to add 1/7, or I forgot to subtract one thing at the end, and a lot of my teachers would be frustrated with me. They're like, Eric, what the heck? Like, you need to slow down. It looks like you're just carelessly going through this test. And I wrote, like, I wasn't being careless. I've terrible ADHD, so like my mind just rolls so fast, and like I'm just do my math problems so quickly. I would do any test quickly. I would always finish first, and it wasn't because I was trying to finish first or I just wanted to rush through. I just That's just how I work. I work best when I'm rolling. I go quick through things, and I would just be. Teachers were getting mad at me. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. This is just how I do. So I'm looking at my mistakes that I'm making, as a problem. And the teachers are like, you're doing a terrible job, but I didn't know what to do. And I wrote a little bit about a fun and effective way I've been able to promote making mistakes in my class. It's more so for writing, but just like in writing, right, you have like your first effort, and then as we've learned through this semester, the importance of a draft. I mean, not necessarily a draft. Importance of revising your work after you've done it the first time, right? If you don't get it right the first time, it's no big deal. And what I would do with my students as I'm modeling a draft, I would purposely make little mistakes. And every time, like most students, there'd be one raise their hand and be like, Mr. Barrett, you did not do such and such correctly. I'm like, right now I'm just trying to get my ideas on the paper. That's the purpose of this. Later, I'm going to come back and revise what I've done and make it better. At this point in time, it's okay if you make mistakes, and it's okay generally. Making a mistake isn't a bad thing. It's an opportunity to learn through revision, and that would work effective because students look up to you so much, and a lot of them expect their teachers to know everything. Their teacher is this like mighty being who never makes mistakes, and students want to be just like their teacher. And when I am modeling making mistakes and saying that it's okay, I can come back and look at it later, the students start to understand this as well. And then also just the whole classroom community, like, we're not making fun of people when they're making mistakes. It's okay. Let's see, our next one, discussion 4. Oh, this one was the one about like timed math facts testing. And I mean, like all of us discussed how these were, stressful when we were young because it was timed and it seemed like a competition between other students. Like this was the opposite for me, because as I mentioned a little bit ago, I work incredibly fast, and I wrote kind of in my autobiography about how I'm like an expert short-term memory crammer. So like these quick little tests were like built for me to do well on. So I'd always be the best, and I felt good about it. I'm like, wow, I'm smarter than everyone else because these are so easy for me. But what is this really measuring, right? I don't know. A student's ability under pressure? Is it measuring my ability to understand multiplication? No, it's not. And then I went on to talk about like how I'm still seeing inefficient methods like these timed multiplication tests in schools today. And like a lot of things I've learned throughout this program, I'm always asking myself, why the heck are we still doing this? Why does every school do the opposite of what I am being taught to do in my classroom, right? And there's a whole bunch of things that go into this, right? Curriculum, it's hard to change what we've done for so long. There's lots of older teachers. And one thing I wrote, I was frustrated just at the end of the year in my second grade class. Well, when I came into a second grade class, even with Bridges, and everyone loves Bridges, which I do as well, but there was still um, once a week we still had timed addition fact tests, and I thought these were so dumb because half of my class was about at a third grade level, and half was at first grade level. So the third grade level, they were like, there were like tiers of addition tests they went through, and like they were finished with them months ago. So when we had these tests, they would just kind of go off to the side of the room and play like math games, while like the lower level students were forced to sit on their own, right? And they're still struggling with like 10, 10 and more. So there was like 10 plus 6, 10 plus 8. And they, would get like two of them right out of 20. And these are problems that they can do easily on their own, but when they're put in this situation, they really, really struggle. And again, I'm just sitting there like, why are we doing this? Why is this happening? And yeah, after like three of them, I just stopped doing them. And the like math intervention lady at the school, who was not the nicest lady in general, she was pretty pissing me about it. But I'm like, oh, we just don't have time for it. We're focusing on this and whatever. And it was okay, but I was glad to stop that from happening. Let's see, how long is this so far? 11 minutes. Okay. Um, the next one, maybe let's go a little quicker here. The fifth one, is comparing like the representation strategy and then the relational thinking strategy in a classroom from Zager. I think it's chapter 8. The representation strategy is basically asking your students to, it was mostly drawing, like draw a picture to represent how they did a problem that was easy for them. I think one was like 7 times, or it was like 6 times 8, I think, and every kid knew the answer, but then the teacher was like, okay, now draw a picture to show how you know that. Then they would all share their pictures, and even though they had the same answer, almost everyone's visual representation was different. And I really like that because it just goes to show every student's thinking is very, very unique. The relational thinking kind of tries to erase the like fragmented approach that's generally in education. It kind of tries to integrate math into kids' lives outside of school, into other subjects. It tries to, um, I guess, like I said, not fragment units throughout the year. Like a lot of times, be like, we're doing fractions, done with fractions. We're doing partial sums and additions, and we're going to move on from that. Now we're doing intro to geometry. I think this relational thinking tries to kind of have everything bleed into each other, which I think is great. All right, so now the last part. Let me get to the prompt here. 1 second. Just the overall kind of thinking of the discussions in the text. Asked about connections to the text. I mean, it's easy to make lots of connections to what Zager, kind of calls how math was when we were learning it. And I mean, I'm not even that old. I mean, I was doing this math, 10 years ago. And it's easy to relate to that and connect to it because she's like, this is how it was. But she's like, this is really what you shouldn't be doing. You should try these strategies, right? And I'm always connecting like, oh, the math facts. Oh, you just, all it matters is if you get the right answer. If you make a mistake, you are really screwing up and you're doing something wrong. And, it's not necessarily what is your thinking. Why are you making mistakes? It's just like, do it this way. You're not doing it this way. That's where you're getting the wrong answer. A strategy I really liked from the book was the representation model. Just because, I mean, as I mentioned, I kind of already talked about, it really, really focuses on how each student's thinking varies, even for a very simple, 1-digit each multiplication problem. And I just like the comparing of students like with their drawings, right? It's like, oh, even I could do it with my second graders. It's like, let's do, 28 minus 15. And most of them would like be like, oh, that's 13, you know? And then I can be like, okay, well, I want everyone to draw a picture on how they solve the problem, and then we could do where I pick 5 of them as I'm walking around, ones I really like, and I try to pick a bunch of different ones, and everyone goes and puts them up on the board. Then we go through them and talk about them. I think that would be great. Would I recommend this book? Yes, of course. What I really love about this book is how she talks about, kind of gives a definition for a strategy that you can use in your classroom, and then she uses like just straight up examples from actual classrooms and what teachers did and what the students did with pictures and stuff like that. That is what I really like, because a lot of books, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this. It talks about what it is, and they kind of move on. I really like the examples of actual classrooms. Okay, I think that's good. Thank you.